This one goes out to the people that are struggling with addiction, that are trying to overcome their temptations, the temptations of the flesh, and that are breaking out from old habits and old mindsets.
Essentially, what they were doing is sharing their testimony, which testimony really doesn't mean anything. You'll find people of different religions, of different faiths, of different beliefs who have their own testimony of when they started believing in such ideas that at the time they then transformed, that became the person that they probably wouldn't have had it not been for that specific belief. Essentially, it's nothing special or particular that pertains to that specific belief. More, it's broadly accepted given the different types of beliefs that one may have. So nothing special in that regard. I attempted to explain that point and even extended my point to that when I left, meaning I began to not believe, that my life then took a change as well, but that the factor for change has nothing to do or is not contingent upon whether or not you ascribe to a certain belief or you don't. With that out of the way, because it's very simple and I think it's pretty demonstrable, it doesn't deserve any more time than that. The main point that I want to make when bringing up this discussion is that in our discussion, he then started bringing up the reason to believe. And with that, I then asked, well, if I don't believe, then what is the consequence, right? Am I damned to hell, something of eternal torment, anything like that? I asked him what he would think, right? I'm not assuming here. And so the sophistry comes from him redefining the term of hell and what that means, and myself bringing up verses which would then demonstrate that this is what it should mean. And at the end, he essentially became a liar. Why do I say a liar? Because of an assumptuous nature? Or my assumptuous nature? I don't think so. So essentially, what panned out was him telling me that I, first of all, wouldn't go to hell as I believed or as colloquially defined, or rather ubiquitously defined, but rather that hell was more a separation from God. And then when I asked the question, which was prompted due to that answer, that, well, if this hell is just a separation, meaning that it's just the same as before I was born, let's say I am in a state of where I have no consciousness, well, that doesn't sound too bad, and that doesn't really sound like a punishment to me. He said, well, it's not that you'd be punished, it's just a separation from God. Well, I told him, however you define it, however you attempt to define it, doesn't really matter, because at the end, you're saying that it's not a punishment. So whatever it may be or not be, it's just not a punishment. So therefore, I don't care, right? Then what's the point of believing? Then no, he said that it does matter if you believe. And then, so then I asked him, well, why? If there's no punishment, right? And this is putting his sophistry to the question. And finally, after going on in circles and circles and circles with someone who they would be able, because his arguments would work on people who are less capable of pointing out fallacies and who haven't learned the basic principles of logic. I undoubtedly think that his reasonings would be more than sufficient for people who have not been equipped with the tools necessary to discern a good argument from a bad one. But finally, at the end, he then admitted, well, yes, you'd go to hell. And then I said, well, you're a liar then. What's all the point with your sophistry? Why can't you just come out and say that there is a consequence? Because you say there isn't a consequence. Therefore, I say there's no reason to believe. You say, no, you should believe. But then I rebuttal with the point that you just made, that there isn't any punishment for that. So then I don't need to believe. But then you say you do. And then so we're going in a circle here to finally when you can just admit that there is a punishment. There is a consequence. It is painful. It is terrible. Now, why the lies? Why the sophistry? Why the need to make it not sound so bad? What are you so afraid of? I believe what it is that they're quite frightened by the fact that them demonstrating that they absolutely acknowledge what it is to be or what is to come if you do not believe, given that it exists, that they now seemingly so have a position that is built on fear. And that is the opposite of what they are attempting to do, but deep into the roots of what they believe, it is rooted in, at least partly so, if not all, in fear. But to be dishonest, to start redefining what hell is, which is fine, but then to go as far as to say that it's not a consequence. There's no punishment, regardless of the definition of said punishment. And then for one to respond that, well, then therefore I won't believe. And for them to rebuttal with that, no, you must, because after going in those circles, there is a punishment at the end of this. It's mental gymnastics and it's clownery, right? It's a waste of time. It's someone who clearly is not equipped to even have the conversation in regard to their own belief, because at the end, they lost credibility. At the end, they're a liar. At the end, they're not to be taken seriously. At the end, they are a deceiver. They are those who the Bible warns believers about. Do understand sophistry. Do understand the redefining of those terms, and that essentially they are lying. They're lying in an attempt to recruit you. It's no different than a scam or a pyramid scheme. We say what it is, but we don't like to say it or emphasize it too often or too much to the point where people are afraid of joining, because we want to focus more on the growth aspect, on the potential of what can happen, but not on the principles and foundations which are pyramid scheme-like. That we don't want to emphasize, because undoubtedly so, it will cause for less people to join, and it will cause for some people to leave. And so they have, if you've ever been a part of some sort of pyramid scheme or pitched a pyramid scheme, which I think most of all of us have been, a lot of their presentations will be, and this has been for myself with Primerica, will be, we are not a pyramid scheme. And so it's no different than the lie when you're speaking with a Christian and they say the lie, there is no punishment, or hell is not the way you have learned it your whole life when you were a believer. It is this esoteric defining thing that I only really can explain to you, and I have the information. And even though the Bible says to be wary of people like me because I am against exactly what the Bible is saying, but I'm telling you this just as a pyramid scheme, that we are not a pyramid scheme. We do not have a hell that is painful and tormenting. We're about love, right? The pyramid schemes will say we're about self-growth and development. It's no different. It's no different, and it should be treated with caution. You should tread lightly in these conversations, because it is undoubtedly very easy to be convinced of these arguments. They sound very good at the surface level. But then when you ask, and then if there's no punishment, and they push back with, but you should still believe, but then why? If nothing is to happen, if you believe or not, it's all the same. Why? Why say don't? Why say believe? Why continue to be afraid for someone to be saved? Why be saved from anything if there's no punishment? It does not make sense. It's a complete, blatant lie. Sophistry on lies that don't even correlate or make sense to the main point of their dogma. Because at the end, you're not okay not believing, because you need to be saved from something. Thank you for watching.